Dead Space 2 is a perfect sequel. It takes everything from the first game and improves upon it, creating what I believe to be one of the best games ever made. The guys at Visceral, rest in peace, truly peaked with this game, and in this video I'm going to go in depth and tell you guys exactly why Dead Space 2 is a masterpiece. Dead Space 2 takes place 3 years after the first game. We are once again taking control of Isaac Clarke, but this time things are a little different. In Dead Space 1, Isaac was a silent protagonist, but now he has a voice and a fully fleshed out personality, and I love this change. For all 2 of you that watched my Dead Space 1 video, I said that him being a silent protagonist kind of hampered the story a little bit because the characters would just tell Isaac where to go and just awkwardly dump exposition to him. Thankfully, this problem is completely rectified in this game, with Isaac actually talking to the NPCs and actually feeling like he has some agency in the story now. And speaking of story, what a story this game has. This game's plot, much like the first game, is excellent, with an opening that is just as good, if not better than the first game, giving off an excellent first impression. The game begins with a call between Isaac and Nicole, showing to us that Isaac was the reason why she was on the Ishimura in the first place. We then zoom out to find Isaac's in a therapy session. His mind has been permanently altered by the marker and what he experienced on that ship. The therapist continues his questions, but Isaac begins to hallucinate.
What did you find aboard that ship, Isaac?
I found something.
What did they find aboard the ship, Isaac?
The marker.
Did you have contact with this marker? It made you see things, didn't it? Things you didn't want to see.
It spoke to me.
What did it say, Isaac? What did it say to you, Isaac? Isaac, can you hear me?
Isaac is woken up by a dude named Franco. He warns Isaac about danger, and then one of the most memorable scenes from this series happens.
You're in terrible danger.
Isaac knocks down the newly transformed necromorph and begins his escape. Along the way, he's chased by necromorphs everywhere, but thankfully, he meets the therapist from earlier, who frees him and gives him a flashlight and a med pack before he kills himself. Isaac is then contacted by a mysterious woman named Dana, who claims she wants to help, and she instructs him to go to the Cassini Towers, thus officially beginning Dead Space 2. This game's opening is fantastic. It sets up the story in a way that instantly grabs the player's attention through gameplay, intriguing dialogue, and very striking visuals. The scene with Nicole is excellently shot, with the red marker flashing ominously in the background as she creeps closer and closer. This game, like the first one, has a very strong art direction, and that's how shots like that were possible, and there are many more like it in the game. I also like how you're just thrown into a desperate escape scenario. It reminds me a bit of Resident Evil 3. I mean the good one. This opening is definitely a lot more in your face than the first game's intro, but that actually works in its favor because this game starts during the outbreak, unlike the first game where you arrive after everything went down. But enough about the setup, let's actually talk about the game proper, starting with the gameplay. Dead Space 2's gameplay is largely unaltered from the first game, however it has been refined to literal perfection. The movement is smooth and responsive. Isaac's movement was very slow and sluggish in the first game, and well, I wouldn't say he's the most nimble character, but he's definitely far easier to maneuver this time around. Beyond just movement, there have been lots of quality of life improvements, such as being able to replenish stasis without the need to open the inventory. You can now see your total ammo now in your weapon select. The melee attacks actually work this time around, and the zero gravity parts of the game are way better, featuring full 360-degree control. But probably the best improvement is the revamped kinesis system. I mentioned in my Dead Space 1 video how it was a little janky to use. Well, now it's been improved substantially to allow Isaac to impale enemies with sharp objects and even the necromorph's own limbs. This mechanic is utilized and emphasized way more than in the first game. In fact, you learn how to use kinesis before you even get the plasma cutter. And what I believe the reason for this is that not only is it a unique mechanic that sets the game apart from others of its kind, but they're trying to instill that mechanic in your mind because it's very important and a key to your survival. When playing on Zealot, which to me is the true experience the devs wanted, ammo is extremely scarce, so using Kinesis will help you succeed in conserving it. Speaking of Zealot, this game thankfully is way harder than the first. Dead Space 1, for how great it was too easy, even on Impossible, which is the only difficulty I play. Dead Space 2, even on normal, is a way tougher experience that actually makes it have to think about combat, inventory, and money. It's completely superior to the first game in every way, and I'm glad that Visceral had the confidence in their mechanics to make a challenging horror experience. For my next topic, I'm going to talk about the presentation. This game is beautiful. The lighting of the first game was already impeccable, but it's just better here. The contrast between lights and darks is higher. You can even see colors come through TV screens. The attention to detail is amazing, but probably the best use of lighting has to be the fact that you can see Isaac's helmet cast shadows in the environment. The team at Visceral had people that only worked on lighting, and you can absolutely tell. They did a wonderful job bringing this game's environment to life on a visual front. But presentation is more than just visuals. Sound is also a very important part, and thankfully Dead Space 2 does not slack in that department either, as the sound design is going to create a downright depressing atmosphere as you trudge through the recently ravaged hallways of the sprawl. The ambient and environmental sounds are just as good as the first game, but there is one thing this game does differently. As said before, the first game took place after the initial outbreak, and as such the game was fairly quiet when it came to human NPC interactions besides a few cases, but Dead Space 2 takes place during the outbreak, and as such, they really use it to their advantage. Time and time again, you'll see people during their final moments, or you'll see them trying to escape the same as you. If you get near doors in the residential area, you can hear the effect the situation is having on their minds.
I'm not opening this door for anyone. I don't care what your security clearance is or what your orders are. I'm armed. I'll fucking kill you if you try to get in here. I mean it. You stay away from the door.
It's pretty sad when you think about it. It really gives this game a palpable sense of despair and hopelessness. The Necromorphs are just as horrifying as they were in the first game, and now there are more of them. The regulars from the first game have returned, such as the Slasher and Leaper, but now we have new types, like the incredibly dangerous Puker that have acidic blood, and these guys can blow you away in an instant, so you have to really watch out for them. They've also added more child enemies like the Pack, who swarm you in large numbers, and the Crawlers, which are literally infants, and you first encounter those in the elementary school. There are some others like the cysts that explode when you get near, the tripods that are the mini-bosses of this game, and the nests that you only encounter in zero-G environments. But my favorite addition to the enemy roster has to be the Stalkers. These guys still make me uneasy to this day. They are essentially Velociraptor Necromorphs, and they attack you by means of flanking, and the noises they make are the stuff of nightmares. Luckily, the detonator makes quick work of them, but all in all, Dead Space 2's gameplay and presentation is a stark improvement over the first game, offering more variety and challenge. But I think now it's time to get back to the story of this game.
Isaac, are you there? You're right, Isaac. The Ishimar is a great ship. I am so lucky to be serving aboard her. You made me stick with it. You made me stick with it. You made me stick with it. You made me die!
Dead Space 2's story is a very personal one. While it does have an overarching story about destroying the marker and escaping, the real focus of the story, and what's most compelling, is the journey of Isaac and his demons. In this game, Isaac is suffering from a unique form of dementia brought on by the marker, and one of his hallucinations that he mostly sees is a bloody Nicole who taunts and torments him throughout the game. It's subtly hinted at during the opening, but Isaac feels responsible for her death and is literally going through the stages of grief. He even tries to kill himself. I feel really bad for Isaac as we see him get broken down by his hallucinations time and time again, and he really starts to lose it. One of the highlights of the story is Chapter 10. In that chapter, we revisit the fated Ishimura. What makes this chapter stand out is that not only are you revisiting the first game's location, and you get to see a lot of callbacks, but it's the long, suffocating bouts of silence, permeated by Nicole's taunting, all culminating in having Isaac rewatch the video of her suicide. On a side note, I've seen far too many people say that Dead Space 1 and 2 are nothing but action and enemy rushes, but this could not be further from the truth. These games very often just have you walking around, exploring your surroundings, absorbing the absolutely amazing atmosphere these games present. People that say that either didn't play the game or just ran through everything without stopping to look around. Okay, side tangent over. No, where was I? Alright, Isaac does eventually come to grips with his guilt, and Nicole changes back to her regular, non-bloodied form, and she actually starts to help him out. But there is one return at the end of the game, but before I cover that, I want to talk about the supporting characters. Near the beginning of the game, you get contacted by a man named Strauss, who's clearly crazy, but he claims to know how to destroy the marker, so you have no choice but to follow him. He killed his wife and child, and similarly to Isaac, he is seeing visions of his family. Yet, unlike Isaac, he continues to run from his guilt, instead of accepting it, which ultimately ends in his death. He could be seen as a cautionary tale of what could happen to Isaac, or really anyone who runs from their guilt and past mistakes. Another character that accompanies Isaac on his journey is Ellie. She's great. The first time you see her, she's fighting off necromorphs. At first, she doesn't trust Isaac, but over the course of the game, they become closer. As they enter the final area of the game, the government sector, Ellie spots a gunship and plans for their escape. But seeing Ellie as another potential Nicole, he has other plans for their escape. This leads to a great emotional scene.
Isaac, what are you doing?
Closing hatch.
Oh. Hey, Isaac, what are you doing?
Gunship commando alert confirmed.
Isaac, what are you doing? Open the door right now!
Emergency launch cycle initiated.
No!
Airlock sealed.
No! No! Don't you dare! Don't you dare launch the ship! Isaac!
It's your best chance, Ellie. You got life support, comms. Hey, you gotta be rescued.
You bastard!
I need you to be rescued. I couldn't save Nicole, but I can save you, Ellie. So, bye.
Now that Ellie is gone, it's just Isaac now. Upon making his way to the marker chamber, a convergence event happens, and Nicole guides Isaac to the final step, the steps that Strauss told him. Now we have another very iconic moment in the Dead Space series, performing eye surgery. This part is intense, and you have to slowly reel it in, otherwise you're going to cave in Isaac's skull. After you do that, it's a mad dash to the end with regenerating necromorph chasing you the entire way Nemesis died. The combat is really at its most intense here, with enemies everywhere just bombarding you left and right. But once you make it to the marker and kill Tideman, the EarthGov guy that's been trying to kill you, you hug Nicole, and she reveals that she was just trying to kill you so the convergence event could be completed. The final boss takes place in Isaac's mind as he fully lets go of Nicole. The boss is pretty easy, just shoot Nicole enough times until she reveals the heart and then shoot at it. Once you beat the boss and destroy the marker, you return to reality and see that everything is collapsing. You've done it. You destroyed the marker and stopped the necromorphs. Isaac looks around him, and my favorite scene in the entire game plays. Of course, it doesn't end here. Ellie, being the badass she is, crashes through the roof and rescues Isaac. They escape the station, and we get a neat little callback to the first game.
What?
Thus ending Dead Space 2. The Dead Space series is one of my favorites of all time. I love the gameplay, the atmosphere, story. All of it is amazing. And Dead Space 2 is the magnum opus. The guys at Visceral really outdid themselves with this game, and I'm so glad I was able to experience it. But unfortunately, as what happens with most of my favorite games, the next entry in the Dead Space franchise completely destroyed everything that made the first two games so good. But that doesn't matter. We still got some really great games out of the franchise, and as long as people know the first two games were amazing, that's all that matters. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.